Aaron worked in a small medical outpost on the edge of a quiet colony world. His life was not filled with adventure or fame. Each day he checked fevers, healed cuts, and set broken bones. The colony was far from the great trade routes of the galaxy, so few visitors ever came. Aaron was content with his life. He cared for people who had no one else to turn to. One morning the colony sky was torn by a great streak of fire. At first, many thought it was a meteor. The ground shook as something huge slammed into the nearby forest. Dust clouds rose above the trees. Then came the alarm from the colony control tower. It was not a meteor. It was a ship. A large transport vessel had lost control and crashed. Aaron grabbed his emergency kit and ran. His heart pounded as he pushed through the trees. Smoke filled the air. Sparks and broken metal were scattered across the ground. He could hear the cries of survivors. The transport had broken into two large sections, both burning. Aaron climbed over shattered steel to reach the first group of survivors. People were coughing and pulling themselves out of the wreck. Some were human colonists who had been returning home. Others were alien travelers who had joined the transport along its route. Aaron did not stop to ask questions. He began treating wounds, wrapping bandages, and giving water. But then a sound reached him. It was a voice, weak and trembling, deeper inside the wreck. Aaron crawled under broken beams and found her. She was young, maybe no more than a teenager, with pale skin and bright eyes that glowed faintly in the smoke. She was not human. Her body was slim and fragile, yet elegant, and her face was marked with strange symbols like natural patterns. She lay pinned under twisted metal. Aaron quickly checked her condition. His chest tightened when he saw her injuries. Both her arms were gone below the elbow, torn away in the crash. One of her legs was crushed beyond repair. Blood, dark and strange in color, soaked the ground around her. The girl looked at him with eyes filled with pain and fear. She did not understand his language, but she understood his face. Aaron put his hand on her shoulder and spoke softly. "You will live. I will not leave you." The girl tried to speak, but no words came. Aaron knew time was running short. He pulled out his tools and cut away the wreckage. Carefully, he lifted her free. She was lighter than he expected. He carried her out into the open air where the smoke cleared. The other survivors gasped when they saw her state. Many thought she would not survive. Some looked away, unwilling to watch. But Aaron refused to give up. He worked quickly, sealing her wounds with emergency foam. He slowed the bleeding, then gave her medicine to steady her heart. The girl stared at him, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Aaron spoke to her again, though she could not understand. "You are strong. Do not give up. I will help you." Hours passed as rescue teams from the colony arrived. Survivors were carried away. Fires were put out. But Aaron stayed beside the girl. He knew she could not be taken to the colony hospital as she was. She needed more than ordinary care. She had lost too much. Without new limbs, she would remain broken. When the rescue commander told Aaron to return with the others, he shook his head. "I will take her myself. She will not survive ordinary treatment." The commander frowned. "Aaron, she is not even human. We do not know her species. We do not know how her body works." Aaron lifted his chin. "Pain is the same in all creatures. Hope is the same. I will not let her die." He carried her to his small medical outpost at the edge of the colony. It was little more than a single building with a workshop attached. There were no advanced machines, no alien healing pods, no nanotech. Only Aaron's hands, his knowledge, and his will to try. He placed the girl on a clean bed and covered her with a blanket. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. He sat beside her, watching as night fell. The stars above the colony sky seemed colder than ever. Aaron felt the weight of his decision. Saving her was almost impossible. But he could not turn away. The next morning, the girl woke. She opened her bright eyes and looked at him. She tried to raise her hand, but the arm was gone. She looked at her missing limbs, then at Aaron. Tears welled in her eyes. Aaron's heart ached. He reached out and held her remaining hand gently. He spoke softly. "You lost much. But you are alive. I will give you back what you need. I promise." The girl blinked slowly. She did not know his words, but she seemed to understand his tone. She gripped his hand weakly, as if trusting him. That moment burned itself into Aaron's heart. It was not duty, not medicine, not even compassion alone. It was a promise between two lives. He would not let her remain broken. He would build new arms. He would build a new leg. Even if he had to craft them from scraps of metal and old machines. Aaron began gathering tools and supplies. He searched the colony junkyards for old robotics parts. He cut and shaped metal in his workshop. He studied alien anatomy as best he could from the few records stored in the colony's library. Every hour was filled with work. The girl watched him from her bed. At first, she was weak and silent. But slowly, she began to sit up, her bright eyes following his every movement. She did not need to understand his words. She understood his effort. She saw the sweat on his face, the way he worked late into the night, the way he stopped only to check on her and bring her food. Each time he returned to her side, she gave him a small nod. It was her way of telling him she still believed. The people of the colony whispered about Aaron's work. Some said he was wasting time. Some said the alien would never survive. Others said it was dangerous to keep her alive, for no one knew her origin. But Aaron ignored them. He remembered the look in her eyes when he promised she would live. Day by day, his workshop filled with strange shapes. Frames of metal that looked like arms. A long jointed piece that could become a leg. Wires twisted into patterns. Small motors carefully adjusted. Aaron tested each piece again and again, making sure they could move, making sure they could hold weight. He knew his skills were limited. He was only a medic, not an engineer. But human will often went beyond limits. When faced with the impossible, humans built what they needed. Aaron was determined to prove that. The girl grew stronger, though her body was still incomplete. She began to smile faintly when Aaron showed her his progress. One evening, as he adjusted a joint on the mechanical arm, she made a sound. A single word in her language. Aaron did not know what it meant, but her tone was clear. It was gratitude. He smiled and nodded. Yes. Soon. You will walk again. You will hold again. As the days passed, the bond between them grew. Aaron no longer saw her as a stranger from another world. She was simply a young soul who needed help, and he was the one who had promised to give it. At night, when the colony was quiet, Aaron would sit beside her bed. The stars above glimmered through the window. He thought about what might come. He thought about who she truly was, and why fate had brought her ship to crash on this quiet world. But those questions could wait. For now, only one thing mattered. He had promised her life. And he would keep that promise, no matter the cost. The days after the crash became a time of quiet struggle for Aaron. The young alien girl, still weak but alive, stayed in his small medical outpost. Her body was healing, but her life could not return to normal without new arms and a leg. Aaron knew she needed more than care. She needed hope that her life would not end as a shadow of what it once had been. The colony outside carried on with its normal rhythm. Miners worked in the hills. Traders sold goods in the market. Children played in the dusty streets. But inside Aaron's workshop, the sound of tools rang day and night. Sparks flew as metal was cut and shaped. The smell of oil and heated steel filled the air. The girl spent most of her time resting in the small room connected to the workshop. She could not speak his language, but her bright eyes always followed him when he passed by. Sometimes she would try to lift herself, but without arms and with only one good leg, she would fall back onto the bed. Aaron always returned quickly to help her sit upright again. He gave her food, water, and a soft blanket. She often watched him with a faint smile, small but filled with trust. Aaron worked with what he had. He searched the colony scrapyards for old machines. He found broken mining exosuites, discarded farming tools, and the remains of cargo loaders. From these, he collected motors, gears, and joints. His workshop slowly filled with piles of parts. Each night he laid them out on his workbench, measuring and shaping them into the beginnings of new limbs. It was not easy. He was not an engineer. He was a medic. His hands were trained to heal wounds, not to build machines. Yet he refused to stop. Where his skill lacked, his determination filled the gap. He read every manual stored in the colony archives. He studied diagrams of robotic systems, comparing them to the anatomy books he owned. He spent hours sketching plans in a simple notebook. The first attempt failed. The arm he built was too heavy. When he tried to lift it, the joints bent under the weight. Aaron sighed, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and began again. The second attempt moved, but the wires snapped when he tested the strength. He adjusted, rebuilt, and reinforced. Days passed in this cycle of failure and persistence. Each failure taught him something new. Each attempt brought him closer. The girl sometimes tilted her head as she watched him work. Her eyes seemed to ask if he would succeed. Aaron would smile back at her and nod. "I will not stop. You will walk and move again." One night, after many days of work, he finally crafted an arm that was light, strong, and flexible. He placed it on the table near her bed. The girl looked at it, then at him, her eyes wide with wonder. Aaron gently lifted it and showed her how the joints could move. Her lips curved into the first true smile he had seen on her face. He attached the arm to her shoulder with careful precision. The connection was not perfect, but it held. He guided her to try moving it. At first the arm jerked and twisted without control. But then, slowly, it responded. The girl raised the arm in front of her face. She opened and closed the hand. For a long moment she stared at it, almost unable to believe what she saw. Aaron's heart swelled with relief. He had given her the first piece of her new life. Encouraged, he moved on to the second arm. This time the work was smoother. He had learned from the first mistakes. The second arm was lighter, stronger, and easier to control. When he attached it, the girl lifted both arms together. She moved her new fingers across the blanket, then clasped her hands together. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were not tears of despair. They were tears of hope. The leg was the hardest. Unlike arms, the leg needed to bear weight. It had to be balanced, strong, and steady. Aaron built frame after frame, only to see them collapse under pressure. He tested them again and again, walking across his workshop while holding the frame himself. Each time it bent or snapped, he fixed it and started over. The girl grew stronger as days turned into weeks. She began to sit up on her own, using her new arms for balance. She reached for food and lifted a cup of water without help. These simple actions filled her with joy, and each time Aaron saw her succeed, his determination grew stronger. At last, he crafted a leg that was strong enough to hold weight and light enough for her to move. He reinforced it with steel rods from a mining tool and cushioned the frame with padding from medical supplies. It was not elegant, but it was steady. When he attached it to her, he held her carefully and helped her stand. At first she trembled, her body weak and unsure. Aaron placed his hand on her shoulder. "You can do this. Trust the leg." The girl took a step. The leg held. She took another. Then another. Slowly, she walked across the workshop. Her new arms reached out for balance. Aaron walked beside her, ready to catch her if she fell. But she did not fall. She made it to the other side of the room, then turned back, her eyes shining brighter than ever before. The moment filled the workshop with a sense of triumph. Aaron felt his chest tighten with pride. The girl's smile, wide and full, was the reward for all his struggle. As the days went by, she grew more skilled with the limbs. She learned to hold tools, to eat without help, and even to walk across uneven ground outside the outpost. The colonists who once doubted her survival now watched in wonder. Some whispered that Aaron had done the impossible. Others shook their heads, unsure of what it meant for the future. But all agreed that what they saw was extraordinary. The girl began to try speaking with Aaron. She repeated simple words he used, slowly shaping her mouth to match the sounds. Her voice was soft, musical, and filled with effort. Each new word was a bridge between them. She often pointed at the limbs and spoke a word from her language. Aaron guessed it was her way of naming them. One evening, when the stars shone bright, she stood at the doorway of the workshop. She raised her new arms and stretched them toward the sky. Then she turned to Aaron and spoke a single clear word in his tongue. "Thank." It was not complete, but Aaron understood. His throat tightened with emotion. He placed his hand over his chest and nodded. "You are welcome." That night, as he sat in his chair, Aaron thought about what they had achieved. He had given her back the ability to live. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. She was not an ordinary refugee. There was something about her presence, something noble in her bearing, even when she was weak. He did not know who she truly was, but he sensed that their lives were now bound by fate. The girl, too, seemed to feel it. She stayed close to him, helping in small ways, learning his words, and smiling often. The bond between them grew stronger each day. It was no longer just a healer and a patient. It was something deeper, a connection of trust and shared struggle. And in the quiet nights, when the colony lay still, the sky above held a secret. Far beyond those stars, forces greater than Aaron could imagine were already moving. The girl's family, her people, and her empire would soon learn of her survival. And when they came, the world would change forever. But for now, inside the little outpost, only one truth mattered. A human medic had crafted new life for a broken girl. And in her smile, in her first steps, he found the strength to believe that humans could do anything. The colony was quiet when the first signals reached the skies. Aaron did not know it yet, but far above the world, machines listened and spoke in the silence of space. The distress beacon from the crashed transport had been weak, but not broken. For weeks it had drifted through the stars, repeating its call. At last, someone had heard. Inside his outpost, Aaron worked with calm focus. The alien girl was walking better each day. Her new limbs, though made from scraps, moved with surprising grace in her hands. She had begun to help him in the workshop. She would pass tools to him, arrange parts on the table, and even tighten small bolts with her strong new fingers. Their bond had grown. She still did not know many human words, but she tried every day. Sometimes her words came broken and strange, but Aaron understood her effort. Each attempt was proof of her will to connect. She was learning. One morning she pointed to herself and spoke clearly. Nira. Aaron paused, his eyes meeting hers. He realized at once what she meant. She was telling him her name. He repeated it softly. Nira. Her smile lit up the room. For the first time, he could call her by her true name. From that moment, Nira grew more confident. She called him Aaron often, testing the sound of his name. Together, they laughed at her small mistakes in speech. The workshop no longer felt like a place of struggle. It felt alive, filled with a strange warmth that had not been there before. But beyond the colony, things were changing. The sky above held secrets that the colonists could not see. Deep in orbit, strange signals were being detected by the control tower. The operators reported faint patterns unlike any human code. The governor of the colony dismissed them at first, believing it to be interference. Yet the signals grew stronger. One evening, as Aaron finished repairing a small joint in Nira's leg, the governor arrived at the outpost. He was an older man, stern and cautious. He looked at Nira with suspicion. Aaron, we need to speak, the governor said. Aaron nodded, stepping outside. The night was cool, the stars sharp and bright. Nira watched from the doorway, her eyes following every movement. The governor lowered his voice. Strange transmissions are circling the planet. They are not human. I believe they are connected to her. He glanced toward Nira. We must be careful. If she belongs to a powerful people, they will come looking. And if they see what you have done, we do not know how they will react. Aaron's jaw tightened. She is not a threat. She is a girl who needed help. That is all. The governor frowned. You may see her as a girl. But others may see her as something more. Do not forget, our colony is small. We cannot defend ourselves against a great power. Aaron looked back at Nira. She was still standing there, her new limbs gleaming faintly in the starlight. She was no longer broken, no longer helpless. She was alive and strong. He could not regret what he had done. I will protect her, Aaron said firmly. No matter who comes. The governor sighed and walked away, leaving Aaron with his thoughts. Days later, the truth revealed itself. The colony sky filled with light. At first, the colonists thought it was another meteor shower. But soon the light resolved into shapes. Enormous ships, vast and silent, slipped into orbit. Their hulls shimmered with strange markings. They dwarfed anything the colony had ever seen. Panic spread quickly. People ran through the streets, fearing invasion. Alarms rang from the control tower. The governor ordered every colonist to shelter underground. Aaron and Nira stood outside the outpost, looking up at the sky. Nira's face changed as she saw the ships. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with recognition. She whispered something in her own language, a word filled with emotion. Aaron realized at once. She knew these ships. They belonged to her people. The colony braced for destruction. But instead of fire, a single shuttle descended from the fleet. It was massive, gleaming with silver armor. It landed outside the colony walls with a deep roar. The ground shook. The colonists hid, trembling. From the shuttle emerged figures unlike any the humans had ever seen. Tall, robed beings with elegant armor and symbols etched into their skin. Their presence radiated authority. At their center was a figure greater than all others. His robe flowed like a river of stars, his crown shaped from shining crystal. His face carried the same markings as Nira's. His eyes burned with a light that commanded both fear and respect. It was the Emperor. The colonists froze. None dared to move. Even the governor bowed his head in silence. Nira stepped forward, her mechanical limbs clicking softly on the ground. She raised her arms high, showing the crafted hands Aaron had built for her. The Emperor's gaze fell upon her. For a long moment, silence ruled the air. Then the Emperor spoke in a deep, commanding voice. Nira. Her name. Spoken with power, with relief, with something that sounded like love. She ran toward him, her new legs carrying her with strength. She stopped before him and bowed her head. The Emperor reached out, his great hand trembling as he touched her face. His eyes shifted to her limbs. His expression hardened. He turned his gaze on the humans. For a heartbeat, the colony felt the weight of his anger. But then Nira took his hand and lifted her new arm. She showed him the joint, the wires, the steel that Aaron had shaped. She spoke words quickly in her language. Her voice was filled with passion. The Emperor listened. His stern face softened. He looked at Aaron. Aaron stood firm, though his heart raced. He met the Emperor's gaze without fear. The Emperor raised his hand. The entire fleet above shifted, their weapons powering down. The colonists watched in disbelief. The Emperor stepped toward Aaron. His voice, though strange, was translated through a device at his side. You gave my daughter life. With your hands of iron and your heart of fire, you returned her to me. I owe you more than I can repay. The colonists gasped. Aaron bowed his head slightly, not in fear but in respect. I did what I could, Aaron replied. She needed help. That is all that mattered. The Emperor studied him for a long moment. Then he placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder. You are more than you believe, human. Your kind may be young, but you have proven that greatness lies not only in power, but in compassion. Behind them, the 10,000 ships of the fleet shimmered in the sky, no longer a threat but a promise. A promise that the galaxy had changed. Nira smiled at Aaron, her eyes shining brighter than ever. The bond between them had carried across worlds, and now across empires. Humanity, once small and forgotten, had been seen. And because of one medic's choice, they would never be forgotten again. The colony that once slept in silence now stood under the shadow of greatness. 10,000 alien ships circled the sky like a shield of stars. The colonists whispered in fear, awe, and confusion. None of them had ever seen power so vast. Yet the fleet had not fired a single weapon. Instead, all waited on the words and actions of one man and one girl. Aaron stood outside his outpost, the dust of the landing field still rising around him. Nira stood at his side, her new limbs steady beneath her, her expression calm but bright. Before them towered the emperor, a figure of unmatched presence. His robe shimmered with threads of light, and the crown on his head seemed carved from living crystal. Every soldier in his escort stood perfectly still, their armor polished like silver fire. The emperor had spoken to his daughter and touched her face. He had seen her new limbs, built by human hands from scrap and hope. Now he turned his gaze fully upon Aaron. The weight of that gaze was heavy, but Aaron did not flinch. The emperor lifted one hand and spoke in his deep, resonant voice. A translator device carried his words into the human tongue. You saved her. You shaped metal into life. Tell me, human, why did you do this? Aaron felt every eye on him. The colonists who had hidden now watched from the edges of the square. The soldiers of the emperor stood like statues. Even the governor, who had once doubted Nera's place, kept silent. Aaron's voice carried through the tense air. She was broken and in pain. I could not leave her. She needed help, and I had the hands to try. That was enough. The emperor studied him. His sharp eyes held both fire and sorrow. He placed a hand on Nera's shoulder, then traced the line of her crafted arm. Your machines are crude compared to ours, yet they hold her strong. Your work is imperfect, yet it carries her with grace. You did not have the power of my empire, but you gave her what even my healers could not give. You gave her hope. Nera stepped closer to Aaron. She raised her new arms, her voice clear though her words were still simple. Aaron made me live. Aaron made me walk. The emperor's stern mask cracked for a moment, showing the pride of a father who had feared the loss of his child. He reached for Aaron again, placing his massive hand on the human's shoulder. In my world, those who save the blood of the emperor are honored for eternity. You ask for no reward, yet you will have one. Aaron shook his head slightly. I do not want reward. I only wanted her to live. The emperor's lips curved into something close to a smile. Then you will have honor beyond reward. The colonists who stood nearby murmured among themselves. They had lived in fear of this vast fleet. Now they watched as their quiet medic was praised by a ruler who commanded stars. The governor stepped forward, bowing low. Great Emperor, forgive our fear. We did not know she was your daughter. The emperor looked at him, his eyes flashing. You feared her because she was different. Yet this human did not. That is why she lives. That is why you still stand. The governor lowered his head in shame. Nera touched her father's arm, then pointed at Aaron. She spoke quickly in her own language, her words filled with urgency. The translator did not catch them, but the emperor understood. He listened with care, then turned back to Aaron. My daughter speaks of your promise. She tells me you gave her strength not only with your tools, but with your heart. She says you stayed beside her when others turned away. That is a debt beyond measure. Aaron bowed his head slightly. She gave me strength too. Her will to live kept me going. For a long time, silence filled the space between them. The emperor looked from his daughter to the fleet above, then back at Aaron. Your people are young, he said. Your worlds are small, your ships few. But today I see what your kind may become. Compassion, courage, and the will to fight for another's life. These are greater than weapons. Nera smiled at Aaron, her eyes bright with pride. She reached for his hand and held it, her mechanical fingers clasping his firmly. The emperor raised his voice so that all could hear. From this day, humanity will not stand alone. My empire will watch over you. Any who dare strike you will face not one world, but 10,000 ships. The colonists gasped. The governor's eyes widened. Aaron himself felt a weight lift from his shoulders. In a single moment, the fragile colony had gained protection beyond anything they had imagined. But the emperor was not finished. He turned again to Aaron. I wish to see your outpost. I wish to see the place where you worked for my daughter. Aaron nodded. It is simple, but you may see it. Together they walked to the small building. Soldiers followed at a respectful distance. Inside, the emperor paused to study the humble workshop. The tables were littered with scraps of metal, worn tools, and sketches. Sparks still marked the walls from long nights of grinding and cutting. The emperor touched one of the sketches with his great hand. It showed the rough design of Nira's arm. The lines were uneven, but filled with care. He nodded slowly. This is not the work of an empire. This is the work of one man who refused to stop. That is what makes it powerful. Nira stepped forward and lifted one of the discarded parts, showing it to her father. She spoke proudly in her language, pointing to Aaron and then to herself. The emperor's eyes softened. He bent slightly and placed a hand on her new arm. You carry the strength of two worlds now, he said. Aaron watched the exchange quietly. In that moment he understood something. The limbs he built were not just tools for Nira to survive. They had become symbols. Symbols of what humans could give to the galaxy, not domination, not wealth, but the gift of care and determination when all else seemed lost. The emperor straightened. His voice filled the workshop. Aaron, you will be remembered in the songs of my people. Not as a servant, not as a subject, but as a friend of the throne. Aaron bowed his head once more. He did not need songs or titles, but he accepted the emperor's words with quiet respect. Outside, the colonists had gathered in growing numbers. They watched as the emperor and Aaron stepped back into the open square. The soldiers spread out, keeping order, but no violence followed. Instead, the emperor raised his hand high. Humans, he declared, your world is no longer hidden. You are seen. And you are not forgotten. The fleet above shifted again, their formation spreading across the skies. What had once looked like a wall of doom now shone like a net of guardians. The people of the colony felt both fear and wonder melt into pride. Nira stood beside Aaron, her mechanical limbs catching the light of the sun. She looked up at the fleet, then back at the human who had given her this chance. Her voice was soft, but it carried meaning beyond words. Together. Aaron nodded. He knew she meant more than walking beside him. She meant humans and her people, bound by trust, moving into the future side by side. That night, the colony celebrated. Fires lit the streets, children laughed, and songs filled the air. The colonists had been spared invasion and given protection. Yet at the center of every story told that night was not the emperor, not the fleet, but the medic who had refused to let one life fade. And though Aaron joined the celebration, he remained humble. He sat with Nira outside the outpost, watching the stars. She leaned against him, her new arm resting gently on his shoulder. The fleet glittered above like jewels scattered across the sky. For Aaron, the meeting had shown him the truth. He was just one man, but even one man could change the path of worlds. The colony did not sleep for many nights after the Emperor's arrival. The 10,000 ships that circled the planet glowed in the sky like a second set of stars. At first, the colonists stared with fear, but over time, they looked with awe. What had once seemed like a threat now felt like a shield. Everywhere Aaron walked, People greeted him with new respect. Some bowed their heads, others thanked him openly. The quiet medic who had once been seen as nothing more than a simple healer had now become the one who saved them from destruction. Yet Aaron felt no pride in this. His heart told him the same truth as before. He had not acted for fame or glory. He had acted for Nira, because she had needed him. Nira herself had grown stronger every day. Her new arms and leg, once strange and awkward, were now extensions of her body. She walked with confidence through the colony streets. She helped carry water, lifted baskets, and even played with the children who followed her with wide eyes. They were not afraid of her. They laughed when she showed them how her fingers opened and closed. She laughed with them, her voice ringing like music through the dusty air. The Emperor stayed longer than many expected. His great ship hovered above the colony, sending beams of light into the night sky. Each day he met with the governor, speaking of trade, protection, and alliance. Yet each evening he returned to his daughter. Often he found her with Aaron, sitting outside the small outpost, looking at the stars. One evening, the Emperor called Aaron to meet him inside the great silver shuttle. The walls glowed faintly, and the air smelled of strange flowers. The Emperor sat upon a seat shaped from crystal and stone. His crown caught the light, casting rainbows across the chamber. "Aaron," the Emperor began, his deep voice echoing. "You have given back my daughter. You say you want no reward. But I cannot leave without giving you something. Ask what you wish, and it will be yours." Aaron stood quietly. He thought of many things. He could ask for wealth beyond measure. He could ask for land, for ships, for knowledge of the stars. But when he looked at Nira, who stood beside her father with bright eyes, he shook his head. "I need nothing," Aaron said. "I only wish for Nira to live freely, without fear. That is reward enough." The Emperor studied him in silence. Then he smiled, a rare expression on his proud face. "Your heart is pure. That is why my daughter trusted you. But I will still give you a gift, whether you ask or not. For honor demands it." He raised his hand, and one of his guards stepped forward, carrying a small crystal sphere. It glowed softly in the dim light. "This is a key to my empire," the Emperor said. "With it, any human ship may call upon my fleet for protection. Wherever you go, my people will know you are under my shield. You may not want reward, but your kind will need it." Aaron accepted the sphere carefully. It was light, almost weightless, yet he felt the power it represented. He bowed his head. "I will keep it safe," he said. The Emperor nodded. "You have earned it." When they left the shuttle, the colonists gathered to see them. The Emperor lifted his voice so all could hear. "This man has shown what humanity can be. He saved my daughter with his hands, but also with his spirit. His choice has changed the fate of his people. From this day, humans are friends of the throne." The colonists cheered. Their fear melted into joy. For the first time in their history, they were not alone in the galaxy. That night, celebrations filled the streets. Fires burned bright, drums echoed, and voices sang. Food and drink were shared by all. Nira joined the children in their games, running and laughing with her new leg keeping pace. Her father watched from a distance, his face calm but filled with pride. Aaron sat quietly near the edge of the crowd. He did not seek the center. He was happy to watch, to see his people rejoice, to see Nira smiling freely. She soon noticed him and ran over, pulling him into the circle of dancers. He shook his head at first, but her grip was firm. Her laughter was stronger than his reluctance. Together they moved among the people, and for the first time Aaron allowed himself to laugh as well. The days that followed brought change. The emperor sent envoys to the colony, teaching humans how to grow stronger crops, how to build cleaner machines, and how to travel the stars more safely. In return, the colonists shared their own skills, their ability to adapt, to create from little, and to endure. Nira often walked with Aaron, exploring the hills beyond the colony. She practiced her speech each day. "Aaron friend," she would say. "Aaron strong." He would correct her gently, teaching her longer sentences. Her progress filled him with quiet pride. One evening, as they stood on a ridge watching the sunset, Nira turned to him. "Before Crash, I was princess. After Crash, I was broken. Now, I am both. But because of you, I am also free." Aaron looked at her, surprised by her clear words. She had spoken them with effort, but with strength. "You were always strong," he said. "I only helped you see it again." She smiled softly. "I will not forget." When the time came for the emperor to leave, the entire colony gathered. The great fleet prepared to rise into the stars once more. The emperor stood tall, his crown gleaming, his voice carrying across the crowd. "My daughter lives because of this world. My ships will guard it. My people will remember it." Nira stood beside him, but when she looked at Aaron, her eyes filled with emotion. She stepped forward and embraced him, her new arms holding him tightly. The colonists gasped, for it was rare to see such closeness between rulers and others. "Goodbye, Aaron," she said. "But not forever. I will return." Aaron held her for a moment, then stepped back. He nodded. "I will be here." The emperor watched the exchange without anger. Instead, he placed his hand on Aaron's shoulder once more. "You are now part of her story. And she is part of yours. The stars will carry that bond." With that, Nira boarded the shuttle with her father. The fleet lifted into the sky, 10,000 ships glowing like a river of light. Slowly, they vanished into the distance, leaving the colony beneath a quiet sky once more. The colonists turned to Aaron with pride. They cheered his name, but he did not raise his arms or call for glory. He simply returned to his outpost, where his tools still lay upon the table, and his small bed still waited. He was still a medic, and people would still need him. Yet as he lay down that night, he held the crystal sphere in his hand. It glowed faintly, a reminder that the galaxy had changed. He thought of Nira's smile, of her first steps, of her last embrace. He thought of the emperor's words. One man's choice, he realized, could alter the path of countless worlds. Humanity was no longer small, no longer hidden. They had been seen, and they had been honored. And though Aaron asked for no reward, he had gained one beyond measure. The knowledge that compassion, even in the smallest outpost on the quietest world, could echo across the stars.